you call this place? Asks this Spaniard. I am not going to even attempt to speak this native language, but he's supposed to say, I don't understand you. Oh, Yucatan? Bruh, what? It's even on the Wikipedia page. The Mayans that lived in this peninsula said I don't understand you in their native language, and to the Spaniards, it sounded like Yucatan. So you're telling me still to this day, we call this area in Mexico, I don't understand you? I mean, it's probably not a direct translation like that. It's probably like, don't stand you. Something that feels a little bit too perfect about this. I don't know how real this is. I guess that's similar to the way Canada came up with their own name. Some settler asked what this place is, and the natives responded with, it's a village. And what a beautiful village that whole place has become. We went into exile after No-No Germany invaded our country, but our heir will be born in Canada, making her ineligible for the Dutch throne. No worries, we'll just declare this maternity ward of the hospital where she's born temporarily not Canadian territory. Probably one of the most Chad things Canada's done throughout history, and that's saying a lot considering Canada's never technically lost a war. Canada was just like, yeah, this section of the hospital is going to be considered like the Dutch East Indies now. Actually, wait a second. Maybe we shouldn't tempt them to bring that back. That was a pretty crazy thing they were doing. History nerds will turn 14 and then base their personality on one of these. We have Roman legions, Viking invaders, some tank dudes. I don't know exactly which kind of dudes. That could be bad. And finally, of course, some Japanese samurai. I feel like this is the case nowadays, but I don't think I was any of these when I was 14. I'm just trying to think, what kind of history nerd was I? I feel like mostly you're either like a Romaboo or this. I don't know what this is. These aren't so much history nerds as they are weeaboos. Maybe if I was as tall as a Viking, I'd be one of these nerds. I feel like I was just a standard like knight and castle nerd. I remember reading so much about castles and how they're designed and what they look like from the inside. Like I remember reading way too much about the architecture of castles, like learning about the keeps and the moats and the wells and all this stuff. I think it was at this point in my life when my parents knew something was definitely wrong with me. What makes this whole thing even scarier nowadays in 2022 is you have like whole animes and history communities like merging together, like there's some sort of unholy alliance that's going on. I don't think I would have made it out of it, honestly. If I'm lucky this was not around when I was a kid. American astronauts give the Dutch Prime Minister a moon rock. Dutch decide to get it tested and turns out it's petrified wood. American astronauts, you weren't supposed to do that. Oh, those sneaky Dutch. We were just trying to pull a fast one on them. Gotta be the awesome thing about being the only country that made it to the moon. You can just like pretty much look around and say anything you found is from the moon. Like, hey, I found these toenail clippers on the moon. I want to give them to you. All of a sudden you have a diplomatic alliance for the next 100 years. Hey, now that we're Christian, can we celebrate Yule? No. Can we throw Jesus a birthday party? Yeah, go ahead. So Yule is a festival celebrated by typically Germanic people. I mean, I guess whatever the reason, they were just out here trying to party. This girl thinking about the boy in front of him and their possible marriage one day. Meanwhile, he's thinking about the collapse of the Bronze Age and its consequences have been a disaster for the human race. Only true Sigma males think about this during class. Oh, dang it, it's those dang sea people. They striked again. Don't get me started on the mysteries of the sea people. Maybe they were the ones that wanted to see the disastrous consequences to the human race. The sea people, after wiping out almost every Mediterranean civilization from the map, and proceeds to not elaborate further. Yo, so we just like oofed everyone. You want to just disappear? Become like the biggest mystery in history. Look at this diagram. We have the Iron Age wall, the Sea People destruction layer, and then the late Bronze Age floor. They are literally a part of the Earth's surface. Like, that's how much of an impact they had. Only the Egyptians were spared for some reason. Maybe they were aliens. Canada's Navy in 1945 versus Canada's Navy now. I mean, this is pretty threatening still, just like not on the same level as this. The Royal Canadian Navy is made up of approximately 8,400 regular force personnel and about 4,000 reserves. Those do seem like some pretty small numbers. Okay, this is a completely unfair comparison. I realize that, but it is still pretty interesting. Canada has 0 aircraft carriers, 0 cruisers, 0 nuclear submarines, 1 submarine in general. Then again, maybe they're thinking, why waste their money on this stuff when you have the US here to pretty much do it for you? They're both in NATO, so they're probably chill. This guy who retired to a palace in Dalmatia to grow vegetables was asked to come out of that retirement, but instead he just said, if you could come here and see the splendid cabbages I have grown with my own hands, then you would not ask for such a thing of me. This is basically how it played out. Please come back to civilization. Lol, no, but you want a cabbage. I'm hoping to get on this level one day. People are gonna be asking me, Drew, why haven't you uploaded a YouTube video in like 3 years? Meanwhile, that whole time I was just rolling around with these cabbages. President Lyndon B. Johnson owned an amphibious car, the Amphib car, or Amphib car, and used it to scare guests by driving them into his lake, screaming about brake failure. President Johnson just doing his little bit of trolling. Meanwhile, his guests. This is one way to just assert your dominance. So wait, you're telling me that we had a pretty good amphibious car back in the 60s. Where is it now? Why don't we all have one of these? Oh wait, you can actually buy them and they're now fully electric. Only 50 grand. I actually thought it'd be way more than that. Wait, never mind. Screw the cabbages. I just want one of these. About to just drive off into the Pacific Ocean and never come back. Mexico fighting the US versus Mexico fighting the French. Finally, a meme about how Mexico dominated France. It's about time. France just thought they would flex on the world by casually taking over the entirety of Mexico. Look how much help they were getting too from Spain, the UK, part of Mexico itself, Austria, Belgium, Egypt, even some no-no Americans. Meanwhile, the Mexican Republic only had the US for help. Oh, this is probably why the US celebrates Cinco de Mayo when Mexico doesn't even celebrate Cinco de Mayo. It's because we was really invested. We was watching, trying to help. Germany in 1938 about to use their boot, which is actually just the Anschluss. And that is going to come straight on down to slap Austria in the face. But I think the key here is that they actually kind of wanted it. Look at this heart. I was pretty surprised to find out just how many people in this country actually wanted the Anschluss to happen, where Germany just took it all over. And funny enough, we were just talking about Mexico. They were the only country in the world to protest the Anschluss. And now there's a plaza in Vienna, which is basically a Mexican square to celebrate it. I'm really trying to go here one day. Successfully measures the circumference of the Earth within 1% of error 2,200 years ago, and he was using a stick. Okay, gotta admit, this was pretty impressive. He was a Greek mathematician, geographer, poet, and astronomer. Also a music theorist. Man, everyone had all that stuff back in the day. Now you can only be like one thing, maybe two max. Imagine if I was like this geographer guy, but I also was really good at math. It's clearly not the case. And this is exactly how he did it. He was able to figure out the Earth was way bigger than everyone else thought. Like, how many years early? At least 1,000 or more? I was the first to go 100 miles an hour, says the city of Truro. City of Truro? I don't know. It's right here in Cornwall, England. What? No, I was, says New York City. Meanwhile, someone off screen, amateurs. What was that? Punk amateurs, screams this random Irish guy in the 1840s. I guess instead of using a normal locomotive, the Irish in the 1840s used a pipe in between the rails, which brought to vacuum to pull the train forward. I guess the problem was something happened to the rest of the train, so only the first car went, and that got this random Irish man to pretty much become the first ever Lightning McQueen. I'm sure he said something like this. When Frederick II tried to figure out the original language of Adam and Eve by raising infants without human interaction to see if they'll speak Greek, Latin, Hebrew, or Arabic. I had no idea this man was kind of a scientist. That's crazy. Wait, I am kind of interested though, like what did they come up with? Did they come up with their own baby infant language? Imagine they like start speaking to each other in like something that we've never heard of before. They use some sort of ancient demonic tongue. English children, when the Factory Act of 1819 reduced their work days from 16 to 12 hours. It's time to party. Now, if only they lowered the required age to enter into a club, then these kids will start truly vibing. This name, however you pronounce that, was a large whale that harassed and sank ships in the waters near Constantinople in the 6th century. Active over a period of over 50 years, the whale made no distinction in regards to which ships he would attack. He went after fishing vessels, merchant ships, and warships. Emperor Justinian I made it an important matter to capture it, though he could never not come up with a way to do so. Talk about the most Chad whale ever. Is this what they modeled Moby Dick off of? They should really make a movie about this if they haven't already. I kind of wish that like whales just started doing that again. I mean, I'm not really out in the ocean. Maybe not. Maybe just don't do that again. But the idea that they were just like casually sinking all this stuff for fun is just crazy. I guess whales kind of fell off once we started making battleships. China in the 1930s and 40s, well, that's traumatic. I mean, sadly for China, you can go back through a lot of their history and probably say these same words as well. This was specifically pretty bad though, since, well, Japan. Let's just say Japan. It wasn't like China was doing all of this just by themselves. Japan pretty much contributed a ton to the horrors. Native Americans building some of the most impressive and large structures of the age out of mud and dirt. Meanwhile, Europeans needing stone and cranes to build castles. Yeah, keep in mind, like, the Native Americans were building massive pyramids too. They just don't get a whole lot of credit for this. King Frederick II of Prussia, where is His Majesty King George? I was supposed to meet with him. King George III around the corner talking to a tree. He thinks it's King Frederick. I guess this guy kind of had some problems. It's crazy how often those were happening to the kings at the time. King Kamehameha, I always say Kamehameha, but I know that's probably not it. On his way to combine the British and American flags so he can trade with both of them. Crazy that someone actually animated this guy too. That looks exactly like him. This is the monarch that led the Kingdom of Hawaii, and still to this day you can see the flag has left a lasting impact. And I'm out here always making jokes about it. It is the only US flag with a British Union Jack on it. I guess once you dig deeper into the history, it's kind of understandable. They came up with it in 1848, 176 years ago, which would still be more than than 100 years after Hawaii would become an official U.S. state. Now, that's exactly how you play both sides, so you always come out on top. Wait, maybe his name is actually pronounced Kamehameha. This man has just made marks in all sorts of cultures. I invaded Canada and burned down York, then got repulsed. You invaded the United States and burned down Washington, then got repulsed. I consider it a stalemate. You consider it a victory. That doesn't seem fair. More arguments about the War of 1812. I don't think we're ever going to come up to like a clear conclusion. It's always just going to be a mystery. Always gray. This is mainly the Battle of New Orleans. People in the 19th and 20th centuries putting the most hazardous and toxic substances on the planet in everyday objects. Yeah, this probably won't cause any problems at all. I don't think. I guess we'll figure that stuff out later and worry about the consequences. The 1927 Liberian presidential candidates summoning a combined 290,000 votes despite there being only 15,000 registered voters. Man, this is impressive that all your candidates were able to do this. Just spawn random new Liberians and then they disappear the next day. I mean, I don't know who you ended up voting for, but they seem like probably the right type of person to lead a country. I mean, they are obviously a wizard or something like that. A modern day recreation of France's Maginot Line. So we have a big, nice wall here that looks, you know, pretty large. Like it would take some time to go around that thing, but that is the key point here. You can kind of just go around it. And just behind it, we have some sort of projectile weapon, and finally a French flag to show that this is definitely France. Looks pretty impenetrable to me. I mean, as long as you don't just decide to go around it. These were defensive fortifications France built to stop Germany after World War I. The solid line represents where the fortifications were really powerful, and the dashes represent where they were not so much. They were much weaker. So to literally no one's surprise, Germany just decided, hey, let's just go around that thing. Let's just go straight through Belgium and see what happens. So very impressive, France. Thanks for bringing this to show and tell. And big thanks to my patrons. Drew, I'm stalking you and will kidnap you December 27th, 2022. DJ McSkillet,
aPhatNarwhal.
Drew's Argentinian
$20
is a lot.
Bjarne Wildfang.
Bring back
Evan
Poland
Price.
Balls.
Good old
Isaac Kilgore is dead. Noah Gamer,
Veiotic.
Bassall
Ortin
69,
5610.
Patrick,
Fresh.
Robert
Robert
E.
Is.
RyeThePie.
Scottish
Eddie,
Tokyo.
if you hear this, I love you. The
Lithuanian
Mexican
Commonwealth.
Twickenhamster.
And why am I doing this?